Hello students, welcome to OK Academy e-learning program. My name is Otin Joseph. I'm your facilitator for Social Studies Grade 7. We are going to have a lesson on the topic Adolescent Reproductive Health 1. This lesson has been divided into two. We are having the first lesson today on Adolescent Reproductive Health 1. Let's look at the outlines or objectives that we have to achieve by the end of this lesson. By the end of the lesson, you, the student, should be able to explain the concept of adolescence. Explain the concept of adolescence. Secondly, you must be able to examine the physical, emotional, and psychological changes in the adolescent. Thirdly, you must be able to distinguish puberty from adolescence. Puberty from adolescence. Lastly, you must be able to explain the concept of adolescent reproductive health. Adolescent reproductive health. So let's look at the concept of adolescence. What is adolescence? The term adolescence comes from the Latin word adolescere, which means to grow into maturity. To grow into maturity. Adolescence is a phase or a stage of life that marks the transition of an individual from childhood to adulthood. So adolescence simply means becoming an adult. Leaving your childhood stages and becoming an adult is called adolescence. So I gave a simple definition here of adolescence. Adolescence is a gradual process that marks the transition of an individual from childhood to adulthood. A gradual process that marks the transition of an individual from childhood to adulthood. So it's a gradual process. What does that mean? The process of adolescence does not happen all at once. It occurs in stages. Adolescence begins with the onset of physically normal puberty. So puberty is the first stage of adolescence and ends when an adult identity and behavior are accepted. That is, an individual is fully considered as an adult when he leaves the adolescence period. And also, the adolescence period corresponds roughly to the period between the ages of 10 and 19. So anyone within the ages of 10 and 19 is considered as an adolescent. What is puberty? I have been mentioning puberty, and I said puberty is the first stage of adolescence. So what is puberty? Puberty is the period in life where an adolescent becomes sexually matured. A period in life where you become fully grown, matured in your sex life. Then we say you have undergone the puberty stage, or you are in your puberty period. So puberty usually happens between the ages of 10 and 14 for girls and the ages of 12 and 16 for boys. So for girls, by age 14, they must be fully grown in their sexual respects. And for boys, at age 16, they must be sexually matured and must be able to do everything the adult can do in terms of sex. At the stage called puberty in an adolescent's life, the individual experiences drastic changes in his or her reproductive system. There are a lot of changes that occur in the reproductive system during the puberty period. The first sign of puberty in boys is usually that their testicles get bigger and the scrotum begins to thin and redden. The testicles enlarge in size, and the scrotal sac, which contains the testicles, become reddened and soft. There is also a growth of pubic hairs at the private parts. There is growth of hairs at the armpits and at the private parts. What happens during puberty in girls? For girls, the first sign of puberty is usually that the breast begins to develop. There is protrusion of the breast for the girls in the puberty stage. There is also growth of pubic hairs at the private parts, at the armpits and around the genitals. It is normal for the breast buds to sometimes be very tender or for one breast to start develop several months before the other one. Yes, a lot of changes occur during the puberty period. In girls, sometimes one of the breasts will start growing for about a month or two before the other one starts protruding out. When this happens, you are not having any health issues. You are normal. Just relax and take time for the other one to also protrude. The adolescence period is divided into 3 stages. Cut. I want to take this side again. The adolescence period is divided in 3 stages. I have already told you that the process of adolescence is a gradual one. It doesn't happen all at once. It is divided into 3 stages. So we have the early adolescence, which spans between the ages of 10 and 14. Anyone within the ages of 10 and 14 is an early adolescent. What happens in the early adolescence phase? In this phase, the adolescent begins to experience the early stages of puberty. So puberty begins in the early adolescence phase. There is changes and development of the sexual reproductive system in the early adolescence phase. Both sexes experience significant changes in their physiques, and there is an increased sexual interest. During this period, too, adolescents develop deeper moral thinking. Though they get a very little attention for the future. They don't care much about the future, yet they develop deeper moral thinking. Now let's move on to the mid-adolescence or the middle adolescence, which spans between the ages 15 and 17. Puberty is completed for both males and females in the mid-adolescence. Remember, puberty begins in the early adolescence and ends at the mid-adolescence. Here, both the male and the female are sexually matured. They can do whatever the adult can do in terms of sex. They can get pregnant, anything. They are sexually matured. Physical growth slows down for females, but it continues for males. And during this period, adolescents begin to set long-term goals. Adolescents in this stage experience numerous social and emotional changes, including increased self-involvement and an increased drive for independence. At this stage, the adolescents try to involve themselves in a lot of social activities, and they crave for independence. They don't want to be controlled by their parents or any adult at this stage. The late adolescence or the young adulthood is the last stage of adolescence, and it spans between the ages of 18 and 24. Anyone at the age of 18 is considered an adult and can be given self-independence for them to go about their own activities. Adolescents in this phase experience fewer physical developments, but more cognitive or psychological development. At this stage, physically, they are already grown or matured, but morally or psychologically, they are now developing. So they develop more cognitive and psychological transitions in the late adolescence or the young adulthood. They gain the ability to think about ideas rationally. They don't like a lot of gratification here, and they also plan for their future and gain a firm sense of identity. The adolescent here wants to get a brand, an identity for himself or herself. Whether the person wants to be a rascal, the person wants to be socially recognized well in the society. This is where they plan getting such identities for themselves. During this stage, the young adult experiences increased emotional stability and independence. Yes, Emotionally, they become very stable and they become more independent on themselves. They do not need anyone to tell them to do anything that they want to do in their lives. They are capable of thinking of bathing or doing anything for themselves without anyone instructing them. They also experience very strong attraction to the opposite sex and develop high drive for sexually related activities. It happens with every young adult or every adolescent. It is not wrong for them to develop drive for sexually related activities. So at this stage, their parents need to give them attention. This is where parents need to give very much attention to their wards by providing sex education and dealing with their wards from a perspective that does not destabilize them in terms of their emotions. Parents need not to hide anything relating to sex from their children, because if you don't teach the child at home, he or she might learn it from outside. Friends might teach your child from outside, and that one will follow with practicals, and you might not be happy at the consequence. Parents need to build very good, calm, and cordial and loving relationships with their children in these times so as to prevent them from being spoiled from the outside. This is where parents must show to their wards that they love them. They must develop very lovely, cordial, and warm relationships with their wards so that their wards can disclose everything to them and they might not be hiding things from their parents. Let's move on to the characteristics of adolescence. At this stage, the adolescent develops a lot of changes in their physical and moral lives. Let's first look at the physical changes in the adolescents. Let's first take adolescent boys. Adolescent boys. In the adolescent boys, there is deepening of voice. Yes, the voice has to deepen. Deepen, we call it breaking of voice. Also, there is broadening of the chest and shoulders, like mine. There is enlargement of the testes and penis. The testes and penis begin to enlarge and grow in size. There is also occurrence of nocturnal emissions. What is meant by nocturnal emissions? In the late nights, you start to have wet dreams. Some dreams where you experience like you're having some sexual activities with the opposite sex. And in the course of the dream, you emit sperms. We call this nocturnal emissions. If you experience this, there is nothing wrong with it. It is not a sign of any spiritual relationship. So you should stay calm at this stage. There is also growth of facial and pubic hairs. You start to experience some growth of tiny, tiny hairs on your face, like mustache, hairs on the cheek, and also hairs at the private part. You also start to experience outgrowth of hairs on your arms, your legs, and thighs. Yes. Development of pimples and acne on the face also occur. There is large pimples and acne that grow on the faces at this stage. There is also acquisition of excess energy. The adolescent boy develops a lot of energy from the little food he might consume, so they can work very hard without getting tired. They also involve themselves in strenuous activities because they have a lot of energy to dispense. There is also growth in height and weight. They grow tall and they also grow in weight. Now let's look at the adolescent girls. What happens with them? For the girls, there is enlargement of the breast. Their breasts protrude and there is a greater contour distinction. Yes, you see the breast developed individually on their own. There is a contour line between the breasts showing the beauty of the female girl. There is also broadening of hips and narrowing of the waistline. The adolescence period is the stage of beautification of the individual for the attraction of the opposite sex. So a lot do happen here. There is broadening of the hips of the female and there is narrowing of the waistline to give the female a shape that will make her become more attractive to the opposite sex. There is also growth of facial and pubic hairs, and also hairs on the face, on the arms, and on the legs. There is development of acne and pimples on the face, particularly with the females. There is also acquisition of excess energy, so they involve themselves in strenuous activities. They go up and down visiting their friends. They cannot be stable. And also there is growth in height and weight. The female grows in height and weight in the adolescence period. Changes do not only occur physically, it also occurs psychologically and emotionally in this stage. So let's look at some of the emotional and psychological changes that occur in the adolescent period. Adolescents become easily irritated or annoyed over very trivial issues. Very simple and unannoyable issues can make the adolescent annoyed at this stage. They develop worry or fear in certain things such as the fate of their future. The adolescent is much concerned about what happens to him or her in the near future. Whether he or her is going to be a big chef or a rascal. So they are much concerned about what happens to them in the near future. The onset of menstruation and nocturnal emissions also destabilize them. They develop strong feeling and attachment for the opposite sex in this stage. The adolescent become more self-conscious and feel shy on certain occurrences. Remember, when you were a child, you used to bath outside. You used to move out with your whole body naked. But in your adolescent phase, you feel so much shy to bath in the public place. And you do not also feel comfortable speaking at public gatherings with the fear of failure or disappointment. The adolescents also feel excited always. They are most of the time excited. They develop much interest in parties. They go party after party. Fairs, celebrations, and they enjoy every social activities that appear in their lives. They want to be independent. They don't want a lot of controls and directions. They feel rejected and think too much when they are insulted at, especially when they are insulted by their parents and they are mocked by their peers. They become very curious and always want to practice what they do not know or see others practice, to feel how everything feels. They want to feel everything that they see around them. So they become very curious and they want to practice everything. Let's move on to adolescent reproductive health. What is meant by adolescent reproductive health? Adolescent reproductive health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being in all matters relating to the reproductive system, its functions and processes. In all matters relating to the reproductive system, its functions and processes. Adolescent reproductive health simply refers to the health of the adolescent reproductive organs. The health of your reproductive organs, okay? It implies you looking after your own body until adulthood, accepting the responsibility of being able to have children, avoiding irresponsible behaviors which may hamper your sexual health and happiness in the future, acquiring the knowledge, skills, and values needed to satisfy a safe sexual life, okay? You must take good care of yourself, especially your sexual reproductive system in these times. Avoid involving yourself in sexual immorality, which may end up you committing abortions and other things. You may end up destroying your reproductive system and may not be able to enjoy. Let me take that part again. This stage requires you taking good care of your reproductive system. Your reproductive health also implies you taking good care of yourself, avoiding any sexual immorality which may cause you to commit abortion that may hamper your sexual life in your marital times. You need to stay safe, take good care of your body, and avoid involving yourself in premarital activities which might destroy your marital life in the near future. Let's look at some misconceptions that are deluding a lot of adults and adolescents in their adolescent life. There is a saying that wet dreams and nocturnal emissions are signs of spiritual relationship. No, I have already told you. You need to experience these things. If you do not experience wet dreams and nocturnal emissions in your early adolescent phase, then you are not normal. You are not sexually normal. You need to attend to a doctor or a physician for him or her to diagnose you. Also, there is a saying that HIV/AIDS is cured by having sexual intercourse with virgins. That is also wrong. Sleeping with a virgin never cures HIV/AIDS. You are not normal if you do not practice premarital sex. That is never true. That is never true. You need to stay pure, protect yourself, keep your virginity or your holiness until marriage. As a girl, you must have what you want by giving yourself out to men for sex and material trade. That is so wrong. You usually get these advices from your peers and some irresponsible adults. It is never true. Your dignity is your sexual life. Protect yourself. Stay completely abstinent from sex and its related activities until you are fully grown. You will grow to become a foolish person if you remain a virgin or holy until marriage. That is so wrong. That is so wrong. Never listen to such advices. If you hear this advice from anywhere, tell your parents. Thank you very much. Next time we'll be having a lesson in adolescent responsible behavior and chastity. My name is Otin Joseph once again, and I'm your facilitator for social studies. Take good care of yourself, stay home, and always make sure you mask on whenever you leave your home. See you next time. Bye-bye.